Barrier, Pokémon Quest, and Burrows and Badgers. This is Staying In.
Pomegranate juice.
Yeah.
Not great. Not
It's
great. Very good. No, it's gross. I bought a litre of it because I thought, well, look, I thought to myself,
In for a penny, in for a pound.
I thought, look, it's full of, I was stood there in the supermarket Googling what is the best drink for you, and pomegranate juice.
I imagine lots of companies market themselves on that quality. It's very rare that a company say, we are the 23rd best drink in the world.
Please, I mean, the answer's water, because you're made up of 70% of it.
Actually, you'll be happy to know about this. Green tea is actually better than water.
Actually, I think you find that matcha is better than green tea, but carry on.
Fine.
I know which one I'd like to have a bath in, though.
Well, pomegranate juice was in the top 5, so I thought to myself, I've never had pomegranate juice before. But I've got to say, I can't. It's full of antioxidants, full of vitamins, full of really good things. It's very high in energy. I feel really good about it. It's just drinking the bloody thing. Like that's the point where it's like, oh, I tried to mix it with elderflower cordial.
What? Are you mental? Are you?
Didn't work out. Did you ever add squash to lemonade when you were young?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, but it is a sort of dark history, isn't it? Because if you did you
dark.
ever?
No, the medieval period was a dark history.
No. But did you ever try mixing blackcurrant with milk?
Wow, Jesus. I mean, the worst I did as a kid was mixing orange juice and apple juice.
Which is not great.
Tutti frutti. Didn't you make... Isn't that how you make umbongo?
But blackcurrant, milk.
Yeah. Well, as a child, I thought, blackcurrant, ooh, that's nice. I like that. Milk, ooh, that's nice.
You drink like I cook. Like, my idea of cooking is, right, pasta goes with anything, yeah, right, have a bit of, right, I'm making some curry, yeah, do some penne.
Yeah.
But to me, I don't see the problem. Two foods that I like on a plate together.
I bet that's quite nice, actually, pasta curry.
It's like when I was at a wedding with my family and my brother invented steak and cake.
Pete, you did it, didn't you? You did
I did
the
it.
thing for me.
I did the thing for you, sir.
Did the thing
Didn't
for
I?
me.
Didn't
yes,
I?
I'm very excited. I'm very, very excited. Have you got it there?
I have got it right here. I've got it right next to me.
Okay. Don't show it. So, I knew that Pete was going to go to the UK Games Expo, which I think I'm going to make my New Year's resolution to go there next year. Cause I feel like it's the kind of thing I need to do. And because obviously there's lots of publishers and game developers there selling their wares, so I set Pete a challenge. I gave him £11 to find me a game, and you found me one.
I did.
Okay.
I found you a game.
You found me a game. So now I want to try and guess what game that is.
Well, shall I walk you through my weekend?
Yeah,
and
okay.
then I can tell you. You can sort of guess at which point I go, let's go all in.
Okay, right.
Okay.
Can you tell me at which point of the weekend you bought the game? So then when I'm listening, I kind of know when to jump in and say... Or I know what mind frame you're in. Either really eager and enthusiastic, or tired, grumpy, and bugger! I forgot to buy Sam that game.
Oh Christ!
It's the Wellington bell curve.
Yeah.
Up and down.
Sam likes jigsaw puzzles, all right?
So when did you buy the game? At what point in the day?
Oh, towards the end of the day.
Okay.
But not. But 2 or 3 hours before we left.
Okay.
So.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. Begin.
So we got into Birmingham NEC and we wander in. Now, I've got to admit, I've done a bunch of conventions in the past and conferences and stuff like that, some for work, some for pleasure, and they're usually a bit of a mixed bag. And I kind of thought going into this, like, well, it's a board game convention. How exciting can it be? You know, what's the community going to be like? Answer is massive and awesome. This, I think, it's the best convention I've ever been to.
Really?
I've done E3, I've done EGX, I've done
you did the MCM Comic Con for Sam's 30th birthday.
Right, MCM Comic Con, did Gamescom, and those were all fine events. But this absolutely blows it out the water. So we get in and we enter the first of 2 massive auditoriums where this is happening. So it takes over most of the 2 big chunks of the arena, and NEC arena is massive. And so you walk into the first one, and it's all very exciting. You go and get your card, and you go and get your little lanyard, and you wander around, and you go into the first area. And the first area is, I would describe it as kind of a slightly more indie sort of a space. There were certainly smaller studios there that were doing board games that I'd never heard of, miniature games that I'd never heard of, RPGs that I'd never heard of, smaller retailers. So, there was an independent paintbrush company that was there. I know that sounds really dull, but, that was really cool. And there was... So, yeah, it was kind of much more smaller scale stuff right at the start going in. And then I'm sort of wandering around and I'm seeing all sorts of stuff. And now, okay, we can see at which point, Sam will at some point chirp up and go, I reckon maybe it's around here. Maybe it's not, I don't know. So the first port of call I wander up to, that I go, this is an interesting table. I go over to... Hold on.
Always getting swag.
Hold on. I go over to a table.
Miniatures.
Very colourful. And I start looking at it. And I am introduced to By Fire and Sword, the miniature war game from Poland.
Oh, bloody hell. Well...
Now, look, this is exciting. This is a 15mm war game. Now, what that means is that it's teensy tiny, so it's not the regular soldiers that you would think of when you play normal war games. It's teensy tiny, really, really small.
Basically not child-friendly. Not Toby-friendly.
Yeah.
Basically.
I mean, sort of, because if he inhaled them, I don't think that they would get caught anywhere. But, yeah, I mean, teensy tiny. And the idea with this mad historical war game, which, by the way, the rulebook is 2 inches thick, it looked like, and 50 quid, just rammed with content about basically the sort of 15th to 16th, no, 17th century, the 17th century, real-world 17th century conflicts. So I was looking around at this, and it's all about, ranks and rows and stuff like that, so I was like, this is all very exciting.
But what's that book that you got, though? What's the book?
Well, I picked this up for you, Sam, because I wanted to show you how hardcore people will go. I was talking with the guy about this, and they must have a few thousand players, but you are looking at spending hundreds of pounds over the course of many years playing this game, I'm sure, and it's super cool and super detailed. But I picked that up for you because I thought that is historical wargaming, something that I've never touched upon. So
me and Kris have done a little bit of historical wargaming because we play Memoir 44 together, which is really good. And we both really enjoy that because other than the fact it's advertised as the game of the D-Day landings, which I think is a little bit insensitive.
Yeah.
It actually is a fair and accurate representation of the battles that took place around the D-Day landings. I have been to those spots. I've been to Pegasus Bridge. I've been to the cliffs where the Rangers climbed up, where the Allied forces and the Rangers climbed up to try and hit the anti-aircraft artillery. And Memoir 44 deals with that in a really accurate and fair depiction. So we've enjoyed it. And there's Battle Line, of course, but Kris doesn't enjoy because of the art.
Well, if you like that kind of accuracy, then that might be interesting to you. This game might be interesting to you because you can purchase Alexander Potiomkin's skirmish force of 1658.
Well, okay,
it's a good year.
It was a good year for Alexander. So I moved on from there. I was looking around at a company that specialised in had these really nice looking dry brushes. Didn't get them. Wandered through, and then so you're in this sort of first area. And there's lots of indie stuff. So looking around at indie titles that are things you might never really have heard of, but they get a good rep at a show because you can sit down and go, oh, that looks really weird and interesting, because I've never seen this before, because this company clearly doesn't have marketing, but I'm here, I'm a captive audience, I'll sit down and I'll play it. Adam, who's one of the designers at the studio that I work for, he took his skateboarding card game, where like it's about doing tricks but with card games and stuff like that, and that seemed to go down really, really well. There's a game about yogi, I think it's called Yogi, which is where you have to do, like, you bend physical cards and you have to hold them in different positions and stuff like that. I think those guys were there, and sort of showstoppers whereby they're little gems that you find at these places but would never heard of anyway. And then I went over and I saw the family games section, Sam.
Okay,
here we go.
And the family games section had classics. They had Rummy Cub. They had stuff like Ludo or whatever it was. And I thought, wow, look at that Rummy Cub.
That surprises me at a place like the UK Games Expo, that they would have traditional sort of games like that. Do you think it acts as a kind of like, so people go there thinking it's like a games expo about like Monopoly and Scrabble and Kaplunk, and they've got those things there and hope that people get dragged into the attraction of everything else that people are being enthusiastic about? Or do you just think it's like, everyone's welcome?
I think it's like, everyone's welcome, come on in. And also big board game marketing teams going, let's waste our money.
Okay.
I don't feel like they had a really good presence there, because it's like Rummy Cub. It's, you know, it's just old school. Though there were people who were interested in that sort of stuff. What was better was you saw stuff like Mayfair and Asmodee and all the other big companies going there and going, here are our gateway games. And that stuff seemed to do much, much better. Catan had a really good presence, for example. This was wandering around that. And then this was a really good space. I moved into Area 2. And Area 2 is where the big stuff happens.
I'm feeling like Area 2 is where Purchase was. I'm getting that feeling.
So there was tons of stuff in there. You had people from our friends at White Wizard Games who do Star Realms and Hero Realms and all that sort of stuff. They were there. Our friends, basically people I've spent too much money on. You know, we went there and saw what they were up to. And the answer is flogging more Star Realms. Going to go and see. You're one of your favourites. They're called like Chaos Cards.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I love Chaos Cards.
Right, so Chaos Cards were there, having a physical presence. And it was really interesting to see how... So there were a couple of these different stalls. You know, it wasn't just Chaos Cards, but there were a couple of different kinds of stalls that were selling all sorts of games. Just retailers, basically. And it was really interesting to see the bargains that you could get. Like, people were just turning up and being like, hey, do you want Scythe for 35 quid? Just like really weird discounts where there was like very few, you know, in that instance, I think there was very small amount of stock. But it was that, but it was also show deals. So it was like, oh, well, if you buy this, this and this, we'll give it to you for a reduced rate. And then going around and seeing lots of different miniature studios. So the thing that really surprised me is how much wargaming stuff there was there.
I'm not surprised by that.
But you see, I kind of was, because I thought it was going to be a board game, much more board game focused.
But if you think about the visuals of that kind of thing and that kind of event, wargaming is a lot more appealing in that exhibition sort of environment, isn't it? Like, you see those tables with the figures set up like it's a war. I think that's a better place for an exhibitor to go and show off their game than it is to have like Go Cuckoo set up. And people go, oh, it just looks like a rubbish Kaplunk.
Yeah.
But this war game, now this looks interesting. So it doesn't surprise me that there's a massive wargaming presence.
I was definitely a bit surprised. And actually, in Room 1, there was also this huge space where you could do, where I think there was the European Championships that F.A.N.C.Y were putting on for their games. So like X-Wing had a presence, Netrunner has a presence, Five Rings, whatever the hell it's called, that had a big presence. And obviously there's the space to do these things. But yeah, there was a lot of miniature wargaming stuff. There was stuff that was kind of a hybrid between miniature wargaming and board gaming. So there was kind of some dexterity games around that kind of thing. I think it's called something like Flick Vietnam or Flicknam or something like that. And it was kind of like something like that. Yeah, it's like apparently we're okay with Vietnam now.
The official war game, the Vietnamese conflict.
Yeah, exactly. So there was that, but there was also a game which I finally got to play, which I was really excited about, and actually it's one of the reasons I went there, which was Wreck and Ruin. So it's kind of a miniature war game in that it has cool looking miniatures, but it's definitely not a miniature war game. So this is a post-apocalyptic car combat game. So think Mad Max, think Gaslands, those and Car Wars and that sort of stuff. So car combat, but it's post-apocalyptic, so it's very much in the sort of Mad Max desert, society's gone to hell, make sure you get as much fuel as you can kind of mould. But it's definitely not a car combat game in the way that I think of car combat games, like Gaslands, like Warlands, like, I don't know...
Borderlands.
Yeah, basically things with war and lands in it. But it's not that. It's actually a hex-based... It's a bit close to a board game, I would say.
Like Ogre.
A little bit like Ogre, yeah. In fact, yeah, I think that's quite a good example. Ooh. It's about moving around... I know, clap, clap, clap. It's about moving around in the space, grabbing territories and objectives. So it's a little bit more GV than Ogre.
Yeah.
And it's about gaining territory, gaining spaces. So I had a two-turn demo with Greg Giddens, who was on a previous episode of the show. And we sat down and played it with Mark, who's at Wreck and Ruin, and he was explaining it to me. And I must admit, I went into it thinking it is going to be this kind of car combat simulation game. And actually what it turns out to be is a big, much, much bigger in scope of the field that it's showing you. So it's this big hex grid of desert that you're playing on, and you're moving out to get to objectives like a big oil canister, and you're shooting dudes along the way. So you're trying to shoot opponents from different tribes and gangs and factions. And while I had a bit of what I would call like feature shock, this idea of I didn't think it was that going in, I was actually really pleasantly surprised. I didn't think a car combat game would work without that simulation stuff. Without the okay, now I'm moving at 20 miles an hour and I turn 10 degrees to the right. It doesn't have any of that. It sort of tries to bring some of that flavour in, but because of that, it's actually way more accessible, and I really liked it because of it. It's still dice-based, it's still got little cards, and you can play abilities from those cards. It's got little damage markers that you've got to figure out. There's a couple of tables that you need to refer to, but nothing too complex. And I ended up walking away from that table really, really excited that it was on Kickstarter, basically, because it went to Kickstarter a couple of days before the show opened, and it seems to have done very well at that event because it's now funded.
And is that like a co-op game, so you have to play it with someone else?
So you do have to play it with somebody else, but you don't have to. It's not played co-op. It's up to 4 players, and I played it with 2, and it worked with 2. It definitely worked with 2. That was my big concern, because often you play board games like, for example, like Catan in 2-player is like, what are you doing?
Yeah, who do you rob?
Who do you rob?
I was inspired by you, Pete, actually, because we talked about last time about model making in miniatures and that fascination with that. And I've been looking for a good mobile game for my new mobile phone.
Oh
yeah,
Kris finally bought a new mobile phone, which is
okay.
Yeah, I've got the Moto G5S Plus, which is not the latest Moto, but it's the same one as Sam's. He's putting his hand up there because it's probably the most premium-looking cheap smartphone you can get.
Okay.
So I wanted to christen it with a game, and I wanted something that had that lovely feeling I got from model making as a child, and I came across Lumino City by State of Play.
That's a good game.
So this is a British company, and I didn't realise how much of their games I'd already played.
Yeah.
Like Kami 2, have you ever played that?
Yeah.
It's a very nice, intricate, abstract paper folding game. It's like an origami game. It's really lovely. It has those really satisfying kind of paper sounds. And I didn't realise this is a company that kind of prides themselves on working with model makers, miniature makers, animators. So often a lot of their designs and levels are actual photographs or actual kind of models that they've photographed and captured, and they've kind of imposed digital imagery on top of them. So Lumino City was kind of like 3 years in development, and on the face of it, it's very similar to these kind of point-and-click puzzle games like Machinarium, say, for example. It has the same kind of feel. You know, a character has gone missing, and then another character, the protagonist, has to go on a journey to find them, and on their way, they help people solving puzzles to open doors, this kind of thing. So Lumino City, in terms of its narrative, is not too dissimilar to any of those kind of types. But what really makes it distinctive is this kind of art style. It is gorgeous. It is like Camberwick Green, it's like Trumpton, it's like there's that kind of Oliver Postgate, Postman Pat kind of animation. where you can almost see the fingerprints of the animators on the actual stuff that's being built out of like scrap bits of cardboard, matchsticks and wood. Beautiful and meticulously made, and you're guiding this figure across this kind of model, and the camera pans round, and it's really lovely. But it's that kind of very familiar kind of tropes and mechanics I've seen before. I'm about 4 or 5 chapters in or so at the moment, and it's really nice. It's kind of like, for me, I'd equate it with reading a book. It's not a mobile game you dip into and dip out of very quickly. It's something you sit down and say, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to play a chapter. It might be you have a commute, say, on a train or something like that. I'm going to sit down on my commute, and it's one chapter will be done. And I go, okay, brilliant, I can put that to rest, and I'll come back to it later. It's not a game that's kind of a quick fix, because by its very nature you can't get halfway and stop, because coming back into it you have to try and remember where the configuration of things were beforehand the last time you left. A bit like Machinarium at times.
Yeah.
I still am not feeling mobile games. Like, just still not feeling them. Like, there's... Because you guys will have a chance to play Pokémon Quest, but has also been released on Switch recently, which I've been playing. And I've actually been enjoying it playing on a console, but I don't know, it's really weird because it is just a mobile game, but for some reason I enjoy it on a console and sitting down in my lounge and playing it, even though the controls are in no way optimised for using the Joy-Cons. But it still is a mobile game in every single conceivable way. I just don't know why I don't get on with them. I just don't, even like a fantastic game like Monument Valley, I'm just like, great, I've played that for 5 minutes, brilliant. Well, phone in pocket, done.
For me, it's the case that, like, when I used to commute on the train, that was when I really played mobile games. Ever since I stopped doing that and I walked to work, I really hardly ever play mobile games, other than something that I can just dip in and out of repeat, like something like Star Realms, say, for example. Even the Battle of Polytopia, which we played quite a lot intensively, that was something I could dip in and out of. But something that's a really narrative base, I struggle with on a mobile, if I'm honest. I really do. Yeah. There are lots of really nice games I really want to down. Old Man Journey's next on my list. But I'm also wary of the fact that generally narrative games don't sit well with me on a mobile phone. Because it's on a mobile phone, there are too many distractions there.
I think we do forget at times, well, I think I forget generally, is that for some people, probably quite a lot of people, their mobile phone is their console. Like, it's their main... It's the way that they play video games. And I've been so overexposed by playing console games and sitting down in my lounge and like having these glorious and lush experiences. I just can't communicate one-to-one with a mobile device. I think I just don't have that grammar, I guess, to put it a really ludicrous and geeky way. Whereas,
no, I think that's fair.
Whereas for some people, it is their console. That's what they engage with, and that's how they communicate with a game. So maybe that it's just a learning process. Maybe Pokémon Quest will be my gateway into mobile gaming.
So how does Pokémon Quest differ from Pokémon Go? Is it a similar augmented reality thing? I've not seen much about this.
I don't know much about this.
No, so Pokémon Quest is a free game that's been released on Switch first, and it formed part of Game Freak's announcement about their new Pokémon game series. So the next big Pokemon game is going to come out next year in 2019. And before then, there's going to be a game called Pokemon Let's Go, which looks like a really nice hybrid between Pokemon Go and the actual Pokemon RPG main series. And sort of bridging that gap is Pokemon Quest, which is a free-to-play, free-to-start, as Nintendo call it.
Yeah, they're very, very cautious when they talk about free-to-play.
Yeah, well, and I think they have a right to be, because Pokemon Quest is one of the most generous free-to-play games that I've played, and I've put about a couple of hours into it, and I'm yet to feel pressured into purchases or feel the really need to purchase anything. How the game works is essentially it's like a isometric top-down wave-based fighting game. So you're exploring this island which is all made out of cubes, and all the Pokemon are turned into cute pastel-coloured Minecraft creatures, and the goal of the game is to explore this island and beat up wild Pokemon as you do it. And you have a team of 3 Pokemon, and you set them to go on an expedition. and they wander automatically. You don't guide them at all through this landscape, and when they encounter wild Pokemon, they automatically start fighting them. And then at the bottom of the screen, each Pokemon that you have in your team has a set of like specials that you'd call them, I guess, like in Destiny, like a one-time move that you press and has a cooldown to it. So there's a slight little bit of strategy to it in when you use their special. Some of them are range attack, and some of them they have to be quite close to use and get the most from. But you can also set all that to auto if you want. So you can set the whole battle to run and the whole expedition to run automatically, so you don't have to press or interact with anything. And when you win the battle and you successfully make it through this expedition, you get rewards like food and items, which you then take back to your base camp. You cook the food, which attracts more Pokemon to your base camp, and then you have more Pokemon to add to your team. And then you also get these things called power gems, which you attach to your Pokemon, and that makes them stronger, and it makes them more powerful and gives them more health. Now, where the mobile stuff comes in is that you have a battery, and the battery has limited slots. So you can only go on 5 expeditions until your battery runs out, and then you've got to wait 20 minutes until your battery recharges. But you can spend PM tokens to fully recharge your battery, or you can spend PM tokens to speed up your cooking process. So you can attract more Pokemon quicker into your base camp, therefore making you stronger. Now, what I find interesting is that Nintendo have deliberately made the microtransaction process really obtuse in a way that makes me think that they very much either intend this to be a very minimal free play experience, and by that I mean they expect people to play it for 10 minutes, put it in their pocket, and for the things just to naturally recharge and move over time, because people aren't going to be playing it for 5 hours straight.
Yeah.
Because you get new PM tickets every 24 hours, and as I said, your battery charges every 20 minutes. So for me, I've not really found any requirement to go, hang on, let me go online and see how much it is to buy like 50 PM tickets so I can go on another expedition. Because while my battery's recharging, I can go and mess around with all the RPG elements, moving power cubes around, making my Pokemon a little bit stronger. And also, the weird thing is that unlike most microtransactional games, you can't just like pop down £5 to buy 500 PM tickets. You've got to buy a DLC pack.
Right.
So there's 3 different DLC packs. It's like £5, £10 and £15. And like, to give you an example, like the £10 Great Expedition pack just means that you can cook more stuff in your base camp. You start each day with 30 more PM tickets than you would if you were just at the base level. You can increase the maximum charge of your battery, and you just get 100 PM tickets. And that's it. There's no traditional microtransaction structure here, which is really weird, but it makes the clue I get from that is that they've made quite a generous free-to-play game and a really like free-to-start game. Like, I don't feel really pressured into any of these transactions, and maybe that's why I'm a bit happier to play it than I am other mobile games.
Yeah, it's interesting how Nintendo, on one hand, they talk about Super Mario Run and they say it's underperformed. It's not done as well as we wanted it to. And then on the other hand, they do this really generous free-to-play stuff whereby you can only spend a certain amount of money in Super Mario Run, and then the game goes, okay, we're just going to unlock everything now because you've paid the whatever it is, it's like £15 or something like that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And so it's interesting. Like, I hope that Nintendo continues down this path of, I guess, what you might call like responsible free-to-play to some degree. Yeah. Where there is a cap, but equally, I'm sure their investors are kind of hoping that people go absolutely wild with it in terms of design.
I think you're going to get I think it's out at the end of this month for Android and iOS. I think you're going to love it.
Well, I hope I can run it. I'm due an upgrade at some point. This thing's starting to struggle with Twitter. I'm just really glad to hear you talking about a mobile game.
Yeah. It is, yeah.
And a free-to-play one at that, and not being massively...
I've played it for more than 5 minutes, which is...
Yeah, exactly. Which is pretty impressive. So it's got to be doing something right, so I'm going to have to play it now. I got to the end of the show.
Oh, all right. And you realised you hadn't bought anything.
And I was like, wandering around, and it was kind of near the end of the show, and I found...
W.H. Smith's outside.
Yeah. Travel Subutio.
Awesome.
I got towards the end of the show, and I was sort of thinking, I don't really, as in the show floor, because we did a tour of it. And I thought, there's not really anything here
A tour.
that I wanted to get.
Sorry.
Yeah, the full tour.
You're shown round by a guy with an umbrella.
Yeah, and here are some nerds, and some more. And I discovered a game.
Okay.
Here we go. Here we go.
Called...
Oh, is this mine?
No, this is called Burrows and Badgers. And Burrows and Badgers is...
Published by our good friends at Osprey.
Good friends at Osprey. And the miniatures are by a different company. So the way Osprey seems to work with their miniature games, or they have historically worked, so they also have things like Bolt Action and Pike and Shot, I think they do, and Gaslands.
Frostgrave.
Yeah, Frostgrave. So they do all these games, but they don't do the miniatures.
No, well, traditionally Osprey are a publishing house, so they would publish the books for the rules, and it's only recently they've got into doing the board game side of things, as I understand it.
Yes. So Oathsworn is the miniatures company that makes the models. So in 2016, they did a Kickstarter to do some essentially woodland creatures in battle armor, in like fantasy battle armor.
Animals a farthing would fight back.
Yeah, basically, it's sort of watership down mercenaries.
This is Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
Please, no, Christopher Robin, no.
Well, the strapline is basically a skirmish game of anthropomorphic animals, and the idea is basically, I don't know if you've ever read stuff like Mouse Guard, or if you've seen any of the
Mice and Mystics.
Yeah, Mice and Mystics, that kind of thing. Okay,
yeah.
So that kind of idea. And it's a skirmish game. So a skirmish game is something like a Bushido, where you've got a very small number of models, and you have a comprehensive rule set, and you put together a very small team, and you take on other very small teams, usually in a table space that is quite small. So,
like Memoir 44.
Like Memoir 44, except for this is a proper miniatures game in so much as you have to get out tapes and rulers and stuff like that. So it's free movement, and it is delightful. It is properly like thematic. It's really wonderful. So minimum team 3 models. So we put this to the test. Alex and I bought 3 models each, and to put it into perspective, my team is basically a bunch of woodland vagabonds. So what I managed to pick up was a massive wildcat with a little axe who looks like a sort of chunky Fagin. So he's got it across his little shoulders, and he's like, right, how am I gonna murk you up? Whenever I play with him, I think he's a bit of a cockney. I've got a pirate.
Okay.
So he's a rat and he's a pirate. And I got a little vagabond mouse who's got a little bag for his swag, and he can run around the battlefield as well. And Alex got some other really cool stuff too, including this fox who has got a sniper rifle. So very cool stuff. Looks really, really neat. Very small teams. And then fast forward a little bit. The next day, myself, Greg, and Alex sat down and actually played Burrows and Badgers. And
How much have you spent so far? So say 3 models. So say 6 models. The
6
rule
models
book for a 2-player game.
How much do you think?
40, 50 quid.
Yeah, perfect. 45 quid.
Okay.
So that is a low entry for a miniatures game. Like, very low. The only additional thing you need is a tape measure and some various sided dice. So stuff like D4, D6, D8, D10, all the way up to D20. But, I mean, if you've played an RPG before, you own them. That's fine.
Or just, count on your hands or something.
Or just count on your hands, yeah, if you want. So, or get an app. Whatever you want to do. Do what you want. So, I've been playing it, and I think it was one of the darlings of the show, because when we got there, I was sort of looking around it, and I picked up those bits and pieces, and within, I would say, a few hours, like sort of when we were starting to leave, they had sold out of a bunch of their stuff. They were really, really surprised that they had done so well.
Is this new then? Is it?
It came out in April.
Okay. All right.
So it is super new. And this edition of the rules, it's in a hardbound book. It's got everything that you need in it. There's no additional campaigns. There's no additional you need to go and get this additional book so that you can field the army that you want. It's like, no, if you want to create this kind of character, okay, so it's a wildcat. And there's an axe, and you know that a wildcat costs this amount of points, and an axe costs this amount of points, and it comes with these skills. And you sit down, and you just work out how it's actually put together, how your warband is actually comprised.
Oh, so I couldn't just buy, because I'm thinking now of the ceramic models my mum used to have on our mantelpiece, which are like various woodland creatures in scary poses,
all Sylvanian families.
Yeah. So I couldn't just strap up. Make a little spear out of foil and stick it on a Sylvanian family and put that on the table.
Slightly wrong scale, but the concept of what you're talking about.
Scale, it's all about the scale, isn't it?
It's all about scale.
If they're all Sylvanian families, then what does it matter about scale?
I mean, fair enough. You know what? If you want to do that, you do
Just
that.
Just a giant wooden duck.
Yeah.
Funky in the middle.
But the cool thing, one of the really cool things is basically... There's a explicit line in the book where it says you do not have to represent the items that the character is using on the model itself. So if you've got a model that's holding a sword and you want it to be holding a rifle instead, you can just let your opponent know. Whereas in a lot of these skirmish games, they're like, buy another model and represent it on the board, otherwise you don't get to use it.
See, I couldn't do that.
No.
I'd have to have he's holding a sword.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
By the way, this acorn may look like an acorn, but it's actually a nuclear bomb.
You're screwed, mate. Oh, didn't I mention that? Yeah, this pea shooter here he's got.
They've got nuclear weaponry. I don't know what you're doing with your sling, but it's very flexible in the way that you put these things together. It's got everything in there, and the game itself runs really quick. Once it's a skirmish game, so it's going to take you a little while to actually understand the rules. But it's all based around being plucky. So like a really low end warband could defeat a high end warband if they get a little bit of luck. But you can always mitigate all of that stuff with good tactics and using the scenery well. There's a lot of vertical movement because most animals can climb, some of them can fly. There's a really good mix of ranged versus close combat. There's magic in it. It feels really fast to play. And once you get into turn 3 or 4, when you're starting to learn it, it really licks along real fast. And turn times are really pretty quick. So you can get through a game in, I would say, a couple of hours if you know what you're doing. For me, that was absolutely the star of the show, and I'm in love with it, and I'm going to start painting these models up, and I'm going to be good, but I want to play a lot more of it, and I'm going to bring it up and show it to you.
Yeah, out of all the miniatures games that you've obsessed and professed about over the last year or so, this is the one that I am most interested in because it's a theme that I can get on board with. It seems like it's very simple. There's a very, very low entry fee. I guess it scales up, for want of a better turn of phrase, if you've got more miniatures per...
You can only go to a maximum of 9, I think.
Oh, wow. So, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be, if I had money, which I don't because I'm saving for a wedding, this would be a very tempting proposition.
I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to bring it up and I'm going to show it to you. But I didn't buy it for you, Sam, because I thought, no, this isn't the game to get him into.
I went to the comic book shop today and I bought Justice League 1. I've not read it yet, but I'm excited to kickstart Scott Snyder's new arc because I've become a little bit disillusioned with comics at the moment. I've not really been keeping an eye out for anything in particular. I've kind of gone off comics, I'd say. So hopefully this will bring me back to the medium.
I've got to say, I'm really not feeling much in terms of comics. I've only got a few left, but I've not bought anything in ages.
Yeah, I'm not going to buck the trend here, but I'm going to definitely say that I've had a few months ago. I had a good 4 or 5 comics that I was pulling from in my pull list, and since Metal ended, I've just made the conscious decision of not really picking up anything else or filling that hole that it's left. So I've kind of let all, and this has coincided with a couple of comics that I've been collecting just naturally ending, like Kill or Be Killed, which has been a fantastic series by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. That's coming to an end soon. Doom Patrol has also gone into hiatus. Metal just ended, and what else is coming to an end?
How did you feel about the ending of Metal?
It was all right. I mean,
worth it then.
I feel like I need to go back and reread it. I think that I gave it a bit of a short shrift, and Grant Morrison came on board for the penultimate episode, and it just really alienated me. And whereas it started off, and I've said this before about Scott Snyder, like, he's really great at the personal stories, like his stuff about Batman coming from a dark multiverse and how the character of Batman reacts to that, really interesting. But the moment it gets into the Grant Morrison-esque taking a spaceship and travelling in between the lines of the multiverse, I'm just like, whatever, please, just
whatever, mate.
I care about the characters and not necessarily the world that they're in. So I've let all those drop. Like White Knight finished. I know Doomsday Clock is currently nearly halfway through its 12-issue run, and I'm really happy with how that's going. That's genuinely a comic book experience. Jeff Johns and Gary Frank's Doomsday Clock, superb piece of work, and if people haven't started picking that up, then it's well worth the time. But the problem with that, though, is it kind of, you need to know a little bit about what's been going on over the last 7 years in the DC universe. So,
and also have read Watchmen.
Yes, definitely, and read Watchmen. But out of all of this, has been one shining example, and as Smee said in the hit film Hook, I've had an apostrophe about how good comic books can be. Because I was in my comic book shop, I'm at this kind of lull of, there's nothing, like my pull list is diminishing, there's nothing really in it, so I'll go and have a look at what's been out recently. And I saw this one comic on the shelf, and it's really interesting because there's the first issue and the second issue was there, and that's really strange. And it's by Brian K. Vaughan, Marcus Martin, and Muntsa Vicente.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You're doing well.
I'm doing really well. I definitely got the first bit right, Brian K. Vaughan. But Brian, Marcos, and Muntsa.
Yeah.
And it's called Barrier, okay? And it's produced by Image. And the thing that struck me straight away is the fact it's all drawn in landscape. So I'll show you, see how it's all like landscape.
Oh, that's nice. So it's a lot of like widescreen vision, quite cinematic.
So basically, it's a widescreen comic. And the second thing that interested me into getting this is that it's a bilingual comic. So half it's in Spanish, half it's in English.
Okay.
And I think that the theme of Barrier is also one that, especially in America, is a really interesting idea at the moment. It's and that's the thing I love about comics, when they pick up on an idea, a current state of feeling within society, and they expand on that. But what's interesting here is that this was a comic that was actually released several years ago on panelsyndicate.com, and which so this was an idea that was first conceived in 2015, and panelsyndicate.com is a comic website where you can basically pay what you want for a comic.
Okay.
So essentially, if you wanted to, you could read all 5 editions of this for free. But, and again, this is the apostrophe I've had about comics and why they're so great, is not only has it been revived by Image to capture that zeitgeist of, you know, a current state of a country in its place, but also this is the first time it's been in paper. It'll be the only time it's been in paper. There was not going to be a trade paperback of this. They released these 5 editions, and that's it. Like, I missed an edition, and I've had to really go out of my way to pick up that edition that I've missed because it's been sold out everywhere. So I love that collectability of it, that, you know, that fact that I've had to go and hunt something down. And again, the actual material in it, the fact I don't understand half of it. And in the back of the book, Brian K. Vaughan says, if you can, don't Google Translate what you can't understand, because that's what the art's there for. And the whole point of this book is it's not really about like physical barriers. It's about language. It's about language barriers and being in a situation where you can't understand what a character or what someone else is saying to you and how that impacts this visual medium. There's the third edition of the 5 is completely silent. So it relies on the artwork to translate that message. And to me, that's the wonderful thing about comic books. Like, Barrier does everything that I want to get from a comic book. You know, it's collectible, it captures a mood of a time and a space, and it fully embraces the medium that it's using to create a piece of art that sends a message out to its readers. And that's what I love about it. And I'm rereading Watchmen at the moment, and again, that's a comic that, you know, I mean, Alan Moore isn't, sometimes he can be quite...
Yeah, I think anybody who knows who Alan Moore is knows exactly what you're trying to say.
But at the same time, what him and Dave Gibbons did with Watchmen was all of those things.
Phenomenal.
Like,
yeah.
Made a collectible series, like really played on what comic books can do as an art form, and captured a sense and a mood in a series that, rereading it in today's climate, is really, really interesting.
I forgot to mention, rather deliberately, for dramatic effect, that earlier in Area 1, there was a bring and buy sale.
Awesome.
So it was a closed-off space, and people would bring their old board games, the things that they didn't want anymore, their old, war games and stuff like that, and charity would get 10%, and the person who was selling it would get the rest of the money. And there was some amazing stuff. There was a load of BattleTech stuff, which, by the way, that's going to be my obsession in a couple of months. There was a load of old BattleTech stuff. It was really cool to see very old games, like some really weird old Star Trek games that I've never heard of. Amazing. But then Sam,
did you buy me a second-hand game?
I bought you a second-hand game.
Oh, I gave you £11. Come on.
I know. Well, so the game you nearly got was a brand new game, and it was a miniature war game called Tanks. And I thought, this is going to be dry as hell.
It's what you could have won.
Yeah.
Okay.
Believe me, you came off well with this.
But
instead, I purchased for you Mayfair Games and DC Comics.
Go on.
Batman, the role-playing game.
Oh, wow.
So this is a game in which you role-play as Batman, because you're always telling me, Sam, that you're Batman.
Well, I am.
Right.
So.
But Dan's always telling me that he's Batman.
He's Batman, yeah. It's a bit confusing, that.
It is somewhat confusing. So I think, what better way of finding out who is best at being Batman than role-playing it and finding out ourselves?
So are we all Batman?
So this is the thing.
Batman.
So one person gets to be the Batman, and the only reason I purchased this is many reasons I purchased it, but one of the reasons I purchased it is because they refer to the Batman as the Batman.
Yeah, well, that's
correctly. Right. You do also get to. There's also a single-player solo campaign.
Oh my god!
Which is
just dressed up as Batman.
Which is
sitting on my own, rolling dice.
So, and it's the
Sam. Are you okay in there? Been in there a while.
I'm fine, Kris.
It was published in 1989.
Oh my god!
That is the year of Tim Burton's Batman.
Yeah, it's around there, and it's just after Frank Miller did his work. So it's kind of this weird blur of like late 70s, 80s like campy art and slightly dark stuff. And the heroes, the game actually suggests that you don't have to play as Batman. You can create your own characters, or you can play as villains. You can also use villains in the thing. And also, there are other supporting characters that you might want to play as. So, for example, I mean, who would you want to play as from the heroes' side, Sam? I mean, obviously, Robin.
I think hang on. Pete, I know the answer to this. I reckon Sam would want to have a crack at playing Alfred.
Oh, I'd love to be Alfred. I think hands down, he genuinely is now my favourite Batman character.
Alfred Pennyworth is available to play as if you wish to play.
But how is that going to factor into a role-playing game? Like, everyone else pisses off to go and do missions, and I'm just sat there rolling to see if I've cooked the meat well.
Can you imagine playing as Alfred in a solo campaign?
Yeah. everyone like grapple hooks up onto the top of the roof,
and I'm taking the service lift in the back.
Yeah. So you can play as Alfred and Vicky Vale and all that sort of stuff, but you can also play as some of your favourite Batman heroes, such as Ragman. You can play as the Question. We all know the Question.
Yeah.
Nemesis. Do you remember Nemesis?
Yep.
So all of those things, and also Pride of Place in the Villains and Thugs. Who might you go up against, or who might you play as? Well, Calendar Man is number one. He's in
Julian
there.
Day.
Number 2?
It's got the Joker. Is it Ribena and Milk?
Catman.
Catman! Because Catwoman's not enough.
What does Catman do?
Catman, he's basically, I'll be honest, he looks like Batman.
Yeah, but what does Catman do?
Catman do? It's Catman is Thomas Blake, a big game hunter who went to Gotham City to hunt what he considers the greatest quarry of them all, the Batman.
Oh, it's like Kraven, isn't it, in the Marvel universe?
You can play as Clayface 2 and Clayface 3, but not Clayface 1. There's
brilliant.
There's a bunch of stuff in here, and interestingly, you can play. You can go up against Man-Bat, who doesn't have a description of who he is, but also if you're playing as Man-Bat, you also have to play as Kirk Langstrom.
Oh, awesome! I like that.
Yeah, so it looks interesting. I don't know if it's any good, but I purchased this and I thought how fun that would be to find out to play a Batman role-playing game. So I'll bring that up with me.
Yeah, because we're hopefully... Well, we are going to definitely be meeting up in August.
Yes, I believe so.
So that'd be a good time to play our Batman role-playing game.
Yeah, sure. I can send it up beforehand. You can have a flick through the rules, play the solo campaign, maybe in a darkened room.
I'd love that. If you can send it up, if it's not too much.
Yeah, sure.
But how much was it?
It was a mighty £7.
Okay, so the rest of the 11 will pay for postage.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
That was Staying In with Sam Turner, Peter Willington and myself, Kris Darby. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure please to subscribe to us. We are on Apple Podcasts, Mixcloud, Acast, Spreaker, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, so what better way to make sure you don't miss another episode? If you'd like to leave us a review too, we'd be really chuffed with that. Visit stayingin.podbean.com for more information and links to all the things, and we've covered quite a lot in this episode. And come find us on Facebook or on Twitter @StayingInPod. Thanks for listening.